not encouraging or advising anyone to modify their firearms. This is for entertainment and educational purposes only. What's up, everyone? This was going to be a pretty short video talking about putting the final finish on these small parts. To fill it in a little, I will first provide some background information about media blasting. This will also be applicable to the next 2 episodes of the series that involve preparation of the remaining components for treatment. As is typical with my videos, I wanted to provide some supporting information and context around what I'm doing. I will link to some resources in the description if you want more detail. Let's get into it. I'm going to cover some of the basics for completeness. Timestamps are provided as always, so you can skip around. I'm sure many of you know this stuff. Media blasting is used to clean, etch, remove material, strip corrosion or contaminants, finish, or otherwise prepare a surface. This is done by forcibly shooting abrasive material at it, usually propelled by compressed air. Media blasting is colloquially referred to as sandblasting, as that used to be the most common media. However, that is not the case anymore due to the health concerns associated with silica dust. In the context of this project, I will be using media blasting to prepare some components for surface treatment like salt bath nitride and anodizing. Some components like these will be blasted and left untreated. When using a rotary tool or a file or sandpaper, there will be directionality to the scratches unless you work to polish all those out. Media blasting leaves an even, non-directional finish. A very fine media blast may be a good starting place for polishing. What's important here is selecting the media that will give me the finish that I want. There are many kinds of media and they are used for different purposes and will leave different surface finishes. For a given type, there will generally be different meshes or grits. Kind of like sandpaper, a lower grit number means it is more aggressive or abrasive. The mesh number refers to openings per linear inch of a filter or screen. A lower mesh number, like a lower grit number, means more aggressive media. The bulk density and hardness of the media will affect its impact on the surface. Denser or harder media will generally be more aggressive. Hardness is given on the Mohs scale, which is usually used for minerals. Bulk density will be a weight per volume, like pounds per cubic foot. Some media can be reused, some can't. Generally, harder media, like aluminum oxide or steel shot, can be used many times over, while other softer media degrades and can only be used once or twice. Media is generally categorized into 2 shapes: angular and round or spherical. This refers to the shape of the individual particles. Angular media is sharper and result in a more textured, rough, or dull finish, and it will be more effective at removing material. Examples of angular media are aluminum oxide, crushed glass, garnet, and silicon carbide. Round media is a smoother, semi-spherical shape. It will generally be less aggressive and leave a smoother finish. Round media will kind of polish the finish too. If the surface has scratches or small imperfections or projections on it, when the round bead impacts, it will leave a semi-spherical indent, but also kind of crush and even out some of those projections in that area. This will leave a relatively smooth and continuous surface, one without sharp corners and discontinuities like those created by the angular media. This will better reflect light, so the finish will be brighter. Examples of round media are glass bead and steel shot. There are a lot of media types. I won't cover them all here. They're listed and discussed with much more detail in the links I provided if you're curious. Media blasting with certain media, such as steel shot, can be used to peen or cold work a surface. Peening induces a compressive stress at the surface. This helps the material resist fatigue and corrosion because cracks are less likely to initiate and spread in the area of compressive stress. The surface also becomes harder and more resistant to abrasion. Shot peening is a common surface treatment of springs because it improves their fatigue resistance and service life. There are 3 main types of pneumatic blasting tools. Gravity fed, there's usually a hopper on top of a nozzle. The media drops down in front of the airflow path and leaves the nozzle. Siphon or suction type blasters have a hose that goes down into a media supply, and there's a venturi in the blaster nozzle that creates a low pressure zone in the chamber of the blaster on top of the pickup tube, and that sucks the media into the stream of the compressed air and it leaves through the nozzle. Typically, these are found in blasting cabinets. Pressure blasters have a tank that is full of media and the air inside the tank is pressurized. When the valve is opened at the blaster, the pressure in the tank forces media and air out the bottom. These types of blasters are usually much larger and for industrial use. A lot of times media will have a recommended pressure level. Higher pressure should make the media hit the surface harder and rough it up more or strip it quicker. Higher pressures will make the media degrade faster. Higher pressure, harder, angular media, and softer material will increase the chance that media embeds itself in the surface. This is generally not good. Any of the three types of pneumatic blasters could be used at the same pressure level given they are rated for it. They would differ in the volume of media they deliver. More media would result in quicker stripping at the surface and the ability to strip a larger area in less time. Large blasters, especially the tank type, require a lot of media, like you're putting 100-pound bags in at a time, and a larger compressor and tank system capable of delivering serious air volume is needed. Silica sand was used for a long time. Think literally like beach sand or river sand. That's where the term sandblasting comes from. It's more often avoided now due to health hazards. Silica dust created by the media breaking apart during blasting is really bad to breathe in. It's linked to all sorts of respiratory illnesses and cancer. Aluminum oxide is a better alternative. Of course, there are other blasting medias that produce harmful dust. Silica sand was just the most widely used. Regardless of media, wear a respirator or at very least a dust mask if blasting is not contained in a cabinet that has a vacuum system. It should go without saying that eye protection, clothes, and gloves to cover exposed skin are a good idea. There are, of course, environmental concerns associated with blasting media if it's not contained. Some, like walnut shells or corn cobs, are more eco-friendly. I had to determine what media to use to achieve my desired finish on all of the parts that needed blasting. I did a bit of research, learned some helpful things, and that led me to include the prior discussion in case it may be interesting to some of you. I think the gist of it is that the type and the grit or mesh of the media will have the greatest effect on finish. The pistol I'm building will have a black slide frame and grip. The muzzle and chamber will be polished. I want these parts to be a matte or satin raw finish for a subtle two-tone look. They're all stainless except for the trigger shoe, which is aluminum. I don't want them to be polished. The finish on this trigger shoe is pretty close to what I want, maybe a little darker than this, but I want it textured with a non-directional finish. The media I chose for this is glass bead due to the round particles that should leave a smoother, brighter finish. I bought two different grits, kind of medium and medium fine. I got these 10-pound boxes for $27 each from McMaster. I also have this media that is a fine mesh mix of glass bead and aluminum oxide. This will be for the frame, slide, and grip. It's the same media that produces this finish right here. I may also use it as a pre-finish for the glass bead to modify the brightness and the texture of the parts. I will be using this little gravity-fed blaster gun. This was $35 from Amazon. I had to get a compatible air fitting for it. All my shit is automotive type C. I'm sure I could get access to a blasting cabinet if I wanted. However, I would have to clean it out, put my media in, use it, clean it, and put the original media back in. If I wanted to experiment with different media, like I plan on doing to figure out how to get the finish I want, I would need to clean it between each one or dick around with trying to put the blaster's suction hose in media containers within the cabinet. I would also have to buy much more media, as those blasting cabinets generally have a larger reservoir. I think this little gun is the best tool for the job. It's easy to swap media in and out and purge. It doesn't require a large media volume in the hopper here. I'm only prepping small parts and not much total surface area anyways. I can hook it up to any compressor, but these do use a surprising volume of air and they do make a fucking mess. I started with the finer of the two glass bead medias. That didn't get rid of some of the sanding marks, so I went to the coarser glass bead. Still had some sanding scratches. I blasted with the glass bead aluminum oxide mix that I was using on the slide and frame. That got rid of the marks I wanted, but the finish was a little dull, so I then blasted it with the coarser glass bead media. I thought that looked just right. I blasted all the other components in the same way, the glass bead, aluminum oxide mixed media, then the coarser grit glass bead. Since the trigger shoe is aluminum, the finish will never quite match the stainless parts, but I wanted to have the blasted finish. Since aluminum is softer, I didn't use the mixed media and just went straight to the glass bead. I taped off the trigger bow because it had a nice finish on it and I didn't want to rough that up. I'm really pleased with the finish. It's a bit brighter than I was thinking I would want, but when I saw it, I was like, oh yeah, that's it right there. It's still more on the side of like satin or semi-matte, but it's bright. There is a slight variation in the finish between some of the parts due to them starting out with different finishes, or in the case of the trigger shoe, a different material. But they all ended up pretty close, especially the stainless ones. The areas I sanded, filed, or modified cleaned up nicely. Before I finished blasting and cleaned up my stuff, I looked at these under different lighting conditions. Outside, direct sunlight, outside in the shade, inside under LED light, inside kind of under some shadows. I had a viewer comment in an earlier video and recommend getting them wet, which is a good idea unless it's a part that may rust. I will explain more how careful I had to be blasting the slide and frame and handling them afterwards. These were all stainless, so I actually did spray them down with water and looked at it again in some varying lighting conditions, and they all looked really nice. I was hoping I could get away with it, but I had to pull the hammer strut and clean out the media that got in between it and the pin. You can see I avoided this area of the hammer so I didn't rough up my hammer hooks. Now these little fellers are going to get stored in their own bags so they don't get scratched before final assembly. Anyways, that's it for this episode. Thanks for watching. I'll catch you next time.